and I started hearing this little murmur 3 years ago. I'm looking for a venue, but I don't want a barn. I'm looking for a venue, but I don't want a barn. And they were reacting to the fact that all of these new venues in the last 5 years have popped up because Grandpop has a farm and we have a barn. So it's logical that we should start a venue, and they don't know what the heck they're doing. And it's super rustic and blah, blah, blah. But ours was built as a venue, and it's beautiful, and it's nothing like that, right? It doesn't smell like cow.
Hey everybody, Eddie Babbage here, founder, CEO of Timeline Genius, your host here of the Wedding Industry Insider podcast, back with another fantastic and exciting episode for you. I am here with Tirzah Caffee. Tirzah is a fourth generation venue owner. She's also a venue coach. She's a national speaker. And Tirzah has created a multiple seven-figure venue that is one of the top rated and top reviewed venues in the nation. She is also the host of the Venue Success podcast. Tirzah, thank you so much for being here today and for coming on our podcast. I'm really excited to have you on the show.
It's so fantastic to be here. It's always an honor to be in the room, so to speak, with other venue pros, wedding pros across the nation. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And we had to work hard for this interview. I feel like we had
did.
some good laughs in the pre-interview about like travel, like sagas and battle scars, but we made it happen. It's really, really good to connect here. And I want to give people a preview of what we're going to be talking about here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to delve into your professional experience. I know there are some gems of wisdom that we can extract. And as I said in the pre-interview, I think lessons, just because you're not a wedding planner or somebody listening might be a photographer, whatever, I think there are lessons about business that apply just across the board for all businesses. And I want to get into your experience for that. And then when I was asking you what topics you thought we could talk about that would be really beneficial for our audience, your mind went to mental health. It's something that we've talked about a couple of other times on our show, but I'm very interested to hit it from the perspective that you're going to bring to the table. But before we get into all of that, will you just tell people in your own words a little bit more about your background and experience and how you got to be where you currently are?
Absolutely. So, you mentioned that I'm a legacy venue owner, and I know you're asking me, like, what does that actually mean? But for me, my family has been in this industry for almost 100 years, which is kind of mind-blowing. So my mom actually was mentored by her grandmother on how to do wedding flowers. And so my mom is a creative, and kind of we happened into this venue life because my mom's real passion is actually historic restoration. And so I grew up on a construction site. We were homeschooled, 6 kids. I'm number 5. And we grew up restoring houses. And she found this 1858 Victorian mansion that had sat empty for decades, and moved our family into this house with no electricity and no running water. Wow. And we renovated this house, and we were very poor. I mean, we were poor and we just did one room at a time as we could afford it. And we did much of the work ourselves. Wow. And my sister got engaged. And so the story that is so similar to a lot of other people that kind of get into the wedding industry, and planners too. Like, I planned my own wedding, and then I was like, oh my gosh, I had so much fun. I want to do this as a job, right? Like, how many thousands of times have you heard that on this podcast? Probably. Yep. And so my sister got engaged. She said, hey, it would be so romantic if we had a home wedding, and we did it here. It's this beautiful location. Wow. And so she got married there in May of 1994. And within 1 year of that time, we were having close to 100 weddings a year in our home. Whoa. And so at this time I was 15, and my sister got married, and she was the one directly above me. So then I was like the oldest at home. And so I was the one just kind of there with my mom, building it from ground up. And so we did everything ourselves. And this was back in the day before there was like a lot of technology. And so like we were at all the wedding shows, and and all the magazines, and we did all the catering ourselves, all of the flowers, the cake. We did everything. And it was really a grueling childhood, to be honest with you. It was really amazing to have the experience, but I think there was probably some missed childhood somewhere along in there. But that was our first one. And in the last 3 decades, our family collectively has owned five. Um, but all of those except for me are now have been sold. Two of them in the last year, actually. So I'm the last one standing. We're here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I've built this one from ground up, and it's another historic house. It was built by one of the founding families of Charlotte. And so it was sat empty from 1978 to 2008, and they were getting ready to tear it down. So we bought it and turned it into a bed and breakfast. And then within 2 years, again, we were having 100 weddings a year. We do corporate. We've had Luke Bryan at our venue. We hosted Married at First Sight. Season 9 was at our place. We've had Ivanka Trump there. We've had a lot of celebrities. It's quickly become, I say quickly, but in the last 10 years, become one of the predominant venues in Charlotte, which I'm very, very proud of. So anyway, that's just a little bit about me.
That is a super cool story, delivered with great energy, Tirzah, and you should be proud. I have a few questions already before we kind of really get into the nuts and bolts of the business side of this thing. Um, how does it feel like selling off the venues? Was that bittersweet? Like having one remaining? Is that something that emotionally for you has any difficulty or not so much?
Yeah, I mean, so when I bought this, our current one, I actually purchased it from my mom. We built it together. She was, nothing really changed except now I pay the mortgage, but she was going to retire and she actually went and bought the fifth venue. So when she sold that one last May, it was not sad because I really wanted her to retire. She's 80. And so we really wanted that to happen, she's since kind of retired to Virginia, and they bought 150 acres and they are raising cows. We wanted that for her. So it wasn't really sad. I think the sad one is the one that is kind of currently going on. My brother sold the original. So he's the one that took that one over. And that's the one I grew up in. That's the one that we were all married in. That one's been hard. That one's been really painful, actually. The transition to new ownership, it's been hard to see what they've done with it. That one still kind of brings a tear sometimes, for sure.
I asked because in your story there's such a personal like
Yeah.
family intergenerational like
Yeah.
love and investment that's been made. And it just yeah, that's really interesting. I know there's so much, a lot of us think about, oh, selling a company is great, but there's also like they're almost like our children in certain ways,
For sure.
especially and the other thing that you said that kind of got my attention was that you worked a lot in your childhood. And how does that affect you? Like, I mean, I full disclosure, I'm asking almost like with a slightly selfish sort of interest, which is my kids actually do a lot more in activities than I did. I used to just play all the time, and like my kids are like on this other spectrum, like they're either learning Spanish or Mandarin or chess or piano, like they're doing all this stuff. And I'm just curious, like how, and as we said earlier too, there are pros and cons with everything in life. We talked a little bit about that
Yeah.
vis-a-vis parenting, like,
Yeah.
but for you in your life, what are some of the pros and cons and effects of kind of having the work-driven childhood that you did?
Yeah. I mean, gosh, man, we could talk for hours about this. Trying to boil this down into what I would really I there on the positive side of it, let me just start with that. Like, I learned work ethic. And I think that kids these days really don't have a lot of resilience. They don't understand hard work. And it was never an option. So I guess that's kind of like the downside to it. It was kind of forced upon us, if you could say that. But um, I am a very hard worker. And because of that, you know what I mean? Whether I chose it or not, it's still kind of inbred in me, you know? And also, when I was 16, my mom gave me opportunities like I could call it an opportunity. I didn't really have a choice, but it was like we opened a bed and breakfast, and I was the one taking phone calls for that at 16 years old,
Wow.
cleaning the room, helping her make breakfast, like, you know, handling the reservations at 16 years old. So, like, I really understood entrepreneurship from a very, very young age. And I think that kids these days, like, they understand maybe a little bit of this gig economy, but it was like, different. You know, it's like building something really substantial from a young age really taught me that I could do anything. And
Mm,
I think that that has carried with me through my entire life. Like, I don't see a challenge in my life that I think that there's not a solution to. And maybe that could be a fault, but like, I am such a hard worker because of the way that I was raised by two parents. And it's not just by my mom, like two parents that were incredibly hardworking. I think the downside of it is that we didn't have privacy. Our my physical bedroom was rented out to wedding clients, so I didn't really feel like I could have that normal, like, put posters on the wall in your bedroom and like be a teenager. Like, um, there wasn't um, a hominess in our home because it was a business. And I think that there's something lost, like, connectively as a family when you don't have a safe, I say safe, but when you don't have a place that you can just be a family unit that's not connected to work. So everything in my childhood that I could think back on was very interconnected to what we did.
mm.
And another downside to that is that it kind of destroyed my parents' marriage. And so I got to be on the front row to seeing what that lack of balance and intentionality relationally can do to a family. And, you know, my parents divorced when I was in grad school. And I think, you know, a lot of it was because of that very business forward mentality in our family. And which, ironically, I didn't even expect that the conversation was going to go here, but I guess you could assume why talking about mental health is so very important to me.
That's really cool. And apologies if my questions are a little forward. And by all
No,
means,
it's fine.
my wife. There are a couple of thoughts I had. One, my wife says that I don't really have like a sort of chit chat gear. Like we'll go to parties and like a cocktail party or something, and she'll just float around like this graceful butterfly, and she talks about the news and her podcast and this and that, and like she'll talk to 20 different people, and I'll inevitably end up connecting with like one person, and she'll come over and we're talking about stuff like this, where
Yeah.
it's just like
Yeah.
real chat,
I love
so
it.
that's just kind of my MO. The second thought I had, as you know, today's my birthday. When this airs, I'm sure it will be weeks in the rearview mirror, but today, as we're doing this, it's my birthday. So it kind of puts you in more of a sort of
It
reflective, sort
does.
of higher sort of state. I'm like, okay, I've been around the sun 47 times now, and I just feel so grateful and blessed. And I'm having these conversations with, friends of mine and buddy of mine, fellow entrepreneur, known him since my freshman year of college. We were just talking about how so often in life, circumstances come our way where we maybe had a different idea of what was going to happen than what actually happened. And we're both pretty spiritual. He's like, God sometimes gives us things that we didn't necessarily
Yeah.
ask for, but that we actually need. And I think that, like,
100%.
and I said this on a Slack post to our team today as I was just kind of reflecting internally on my birthday, which also happens to be the birthday of Tom Lynch's, which is a whole separate crazy thing. But I was just like, it. I'm grateful not just for the great days, but also for the days that were really challenging. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm kind of sensing that same sort of energy and perspective in you about some of the experiences that you went through, like the good, the bad, but it all makes us
Absolutely.
who we are.
Yeah, I'm a very faith-based person. So it's cool to hear that we have that in common. But I think a lot of people would say that they have some type of faith in their life. But for us, I grew up in a Christian home, and It's something that definitely has grounded me in my life. And as I've sat with many different therapists, as we all should have a good therapist on speed dial, but
Yeah.
it's
Oh, well
been the
said.
thing that I could tell you that has been a common denominator in all those conversations is that no pain is wasted, no hardship,
Mm,
no experience in your life is a waste, and it just depends on how we filter it, right? And so I think people that know me intimately will say to me, oh my gosh, Tirzah, like you're doing really well for some of the things that you've been through. And to me, I give all glory to God in that. But it takes hard work, right? It takes really intentionality to look at those things that have happened in your life and trying to see the silver lining and take the good, let go of the bad. Don't sit in it. Don't be a bitter person. I am not that kind of person that feels anger towards my parents for my childhood. I think a lot of times people are doing the best that they can, and you just got to accept that, like they also might have had a childhood that's affecting how they're relating in life. And there's just so much to it that we could just sit and feel sorry for ourselves, or we could just kind of make the best of it. And I think that's honestly has caused me to be a really I think I could say this without being arrogant, like a really freaking awesome boss. Like
uh,
I work really hard to see my employees and appreciate them, and create an atmosphere where they feel seen and safe. And that it's not always all about the grind and the work and all of that. So it's caused me to be a different kind of mom, and we can't probably have time to talk about that today, but I'll just tell you a pro from growing up in that kind of childhood is that I knew as an entrepreneur, and I would encourage any of the listeners, it doesn't matter what kind of business owner you are, that your family is the absolute priority. And your team needs to know
mhm.
that.
Yes.
Like yesterday, my son passed out on the track field. It was 100 degrees here in North Carolina, and he passed out. And my staff, I don't even have to explain. They're like, bye. And they know that it doesn't matter that I had things going on. Everything drops when it comes to my family, and my children know that. And they see that, and they have never really had to get the pieces of me. They get the first fruits of me.
So that's really interesting. I love this conversation, Tirza. This is just fantastic. So hearing you say that is really interesting. Like I feel such like a sort of kinship, like in like kindred spirits in the way you're kind of thinking. I feel the same way about family, and I'm gonna put forth for your sort of consideration and feedback an issue that kind of springs out of that. Because for me, as I mentioned in the pre-interview, I have a 6-year-old boy and a 2-year-old, and I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and part of my the allure that entrepreneurship had for me was it would allow me to have flexibility and control over my schedule. Like I went to law school, and I knew I never really wanted to practice law. That I wanted to, yeah, be an entrepreneur. So in putting in the amount of time that I do with my kids every single day, I do all these like learning sessions and stuff with them, which is not to say that I don't work, obviously very hard as an entrepreneur, like you said, work ethic, but balancing those two things can be tricky. Um, there can almost be this inner voice that's like, wait a minute, in order for me to be successful and to accomplish this big dream or whatever the goal is that I've set my sights on, can I really devote? Because you look at a lot of the models for success and you see people that are like, Steve Jobs or Bill Gates, like these people slept at their desk and that's all they ever did, right? Like, how do you kind of manage those two parts of yourself? The hardworking part of yourself, the ambitious, I'm going
Mm-hmm.
to thrive in business self with also, I am first and foremost committed to my family.
Yes. So, a couple things. One, I involved my children in it from a very, very young age, and I didn't protect them from knowing what it is that I did. And sometimes, I would engage them in conversations like, I wanted them to feel that mom didn't own the business. Our family own this business. And when I take you on a Disney cruise, you understand that because we work hard, mom and dad and the family, sometimes it doesn't mean that the kids don't experience some sacrifice of seeing us work, right? So I don't protect them from the fact that we can't be at everything like we tried. So one of the priorities that I made is that I wanted to be at as many school activities as I could, because I know that that is something that is so important to kids. And not being able to look up in the stands at a volleyball game and see your parent, I didn't want my daughter to ever feel that. And so we made that commitment to them, but at the same time they understand we're in the wedding industry, and there are commitments that we have on the weekends that are going to maybe affect their social life a little bit or whatever. But they I think that we did a really good job helping them see that they got benefits from that as well. So that when we were able to take them to Mexico, or take them, like I said, on a Disney cruise, or, buy them something kind of extravagant, we always let them know where that came from. And we always like set goals to be like, hey, like, because I'm one of those people that don't really believe that when you're building a business, there's balance. And it's like you have to go through these intentional times. And if your kids know, hey kids, like daddy's got to really, really focus for the next month. And it might be hard. I might not be able to tuck you in every night. Mom's going to have to do that, because I'm doing this. But when we get to the end of that, here's the reward. That
Yeah.
it's not just Eddie being able to go buy a new car because you did really well that quarter, right? It's like the kids get to see that they get to benefit from dad being like this amazing business owner. And I think that that's something that we did a great job at. I mean, I say we did. My son is almost, he's 18, so we're almost empty nesters. But I think that, again, that was just something that I didn't really experience a lot in my childhood, and I wanted to make sure that my kids, I mean, they work for me, but I also have never required them to work for me. It was their choice, and I waited until they asked. And they love their jobs. And so I'm hopeful. I don't know. Maybe you'd have to ask them. I'm hopeful that when they reflect upon their childhood, that they don't feel resentment, that they see that they benefited greatly from us having this business. But I don't know if that answers your question.
It
But
does.
yeah,
No, no, no. And I'm really glad that I asked Tirzah, because I spend so much, I've been doing this podcast for heck over 4 years now. And I spend so much time just really hammering on the business side of things. But, I feel like people might not even know if they listen to, a number of these episodes, like how much, I am also prioritizing family. And I think that, like, just giving acknowledgement to that, as we still will get to business stuff, that matters. Because I mean, there's no, like, hearing, there's almost like a, you get one crack at this, the same way you get one crack at a wedding, you get one crack at the parenting thing. And at this point, you're already talking about this stretch in the past, like it's in the rearview mirror. And I
yeah,
want to have as few regrets when I get to that point as possible, while also shooting for the moon and encouraging everybody that listens to us right now to shoot for the moon in their
yes.
business.
Yeah, and they're watching you. Like we
Yeah.
talked about that a little bit before we started. Like your kids are like you're modeling what to do when you're in the middle of the airport and your flight is canceled. They are watching you. And I love seeing how my kids, what they say, like how they describe me to people. I feel proud of that. And I feel proud of like the way that my daughter now, like when I started a podcast, she's the one that's producing the whole thing. Like she loves it. And I wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't for her. So
So
I love seeing that they don't have a resentful attitude about it. However, I will say that they are very clear with me. Hey mama, like the legacy ends with you. Like there's no fifth generation. And I'm totally actually fully in support of that. So it's going to end with me. Sorry, great grandma, but it's, I think we'll be ready to, when the time comes for us to retire, we'll be ready to say goodbye to weddings for a little bit.
it all works out. I'm sure by the
It
time
does.
it'll be fine. So something that is super, I mean, this is just all fantastic context and great points. I feel like about life and business are actually unified. They're not separate. Sometimes we kind of tend
100%.
to think of
Yeah.
them as if they're compartmentalized, but business is a part of life and a part of our personal journey. And all of that personal growth. I'm certainly drawn to the fact, Tirzah, that you have created a multiple seven figure venue, like the success that you talked about. And I know part of it is due to hard work because we kind of talked about that. Um, Again, harkening back to this notion that there are certain principles that apply across the board to success. I like trying to be a student of success in business, especially on the podcast so that other people can be students vicariously. So, as you look back on your career and look at the successes that you've had, what do you attribute? Like, what's the first thing that comes to your mind that you would attribute that success to?
Team, 100% team, and valuing team, and knowing that the people that you have in your circle are everything, and that and that I'm not good at everything, and putting people in place and being humble to know that I can't do it all. I think a lot of entrepreneurs fail because they are control freaks and they won't let go. And I had a mentor tell me once, Tirzah, if you could find someone, because I was doing all of the sales, all the marketing. I was doing all of it, doing every single tour. And he said, if you could find someone that is, because I'm good at sales, so it's hard to let go when you know you're really like
Absolutely.
that's my shtick. I love it.
Absolutely.
And I love the psychology behind it. I love the relationship behind it. I love it. But when I took over ownership, I knew that there was no way I could be the GM. We have 30 employees. So I couldn't GM and be texting and schmoozing potential clients and doing all that. So he said, if you could find someone that could do it 70% as well as you, hire them. And I was terrified, Eddie. Like, I'm like, what happens if I let go of this? Because if we don't have these sales, we don't have a business, right? And it just felt like I was letting go of the most important part of our business. And there's not time to go into the amazing way that some of these employees have come to me, amazing ways. But bringing someone in to help me was, I think, what took our business to the next level. That there are a lot of venues out there that are doing okay, but they can't scale it to the next level to be a multiple seven figure venue because they won't let go of control. And I think that it's the biggest thing that I would say to any entrepreneur is like, hey, listen, you are not the queen mother. There are other people out there that like know better than you. Like, don't sit there and waste your time learning every in and out of SEO, because your time is so much more valuable
Woo.
doing something else, And a lot of entrepreneurs are cheap, and they start a business, but they don't anticipate the financial investment that they need to be getting a good coach, consultant, or employee that's going to actually help them be able to work on their business and not always in it. Because when you're working in your business, you can't scale. And so that has been probably one of the biggest lessons I would tell any entrepreneur is that you as a solo operation, you only have so many minutes in a day, right? And you're just always, you need to get to the point where you're not drowning and you could have that objective viewpoint on your business and be able to see and put the right people in place that can thrive and do better than you in some cases.
You know how sometimes, like when people are talking, there's a whole little conversation that's distracting you that's in your head? As you were talking, the conversation in my head was just like, I want to have, like in the club when a hot song comes on, they're like, like you're just dropping bombs like I want on our podcast. Like it's hot right now. Like I just feel like that was fire. Like that was really, and it's not like, look, oh, we've never heard work on my business, not in it, but like the nuance, the energy, you can feel the depth in the experience, right? Like this isn't somebody who read something in a book, relaying something she read in the book. Like that little snippet is years of like
Yes.
lessons learned and observations and banging your head on a wall, like condensed into just a few seconds.
Well, let me just add something that is interesting fact. So when we opened our venue, the one that I currently run, Alexander Homestead. So our market analysis showed that there was less than 20 venues within 30-mile radius, right? So we were coming into a market where, not that our success was easy, but it was ripe. It was ripe and just ready for what we had. Because we are, as a crow flies, about 3 miles from uptown Charlotte. We call our downtown uptown. Don't ask me, it's silly. Anyway, so we're our city venue, but we're like 5 acres of botanical gardens. And man, if we had time, maybe another episode, how we've pivoted our venue, because we're a barn venue, into not being a barn venue has been really interesting because the market changed about that. But in the last, I think 5 years is what we found, there is 114 venues now within 30 miles of my radius of my venue. So imagine what that takes as a business owner to be like, oh my gosh, like this market is like inundated with all of these venues, and like, how do you pivot and how do you respond to that as a business owner, and how do you guide your team through that? And it has been extremely challenging. So I guess the second thing that I would kind of say, like, tip about that is to never accept status quo, that if you're not growing, you're dying. And that's something, you know, again, like, it's a cliche thing. You hear that all of the time. But I think a lot of times people in the wedding industry, it can be a lucrative opportunity. There's a lot, $70 billion industry or whatever it is now, you know, like there's a lot of money to be had. But staying ahead of the curve, I think, is something that I would also say to people, is like, you need to always be forward thinking. You need to be thinking about, like, what is the emotional climate of this generation, studying these different, like, generations of, and how they are, like, when millennials came around, now it's just like kind of like we just joke about it now, but you know, now you deal with Gen Zs, and like understanding how are these actually children that I'm raising, like how are they going to enter the market, and what are going to be the challenges that you're going to be facing, but not reacting to it, being forward thinking about it. And I think that that's something that I've done well, because I've followed people that have that forward thinking mentality as well. You know, like, you've been doing a podcast for 4 years, right? Like, what made you think, oh man, like, in a few years, podcasts are going to be everything to people? You know what I mean? Like, how can I, like, people that kind of entered into something before it was really a thing. I did that at our venue with the way that I pivoted our business model. So yeah, it's just being a student, basically. I guess I could summarize it being that, like, be a student of culture, and don't be lazy.
As a wedding planner, you know how important it is to create detailed wedding day timelines for your events. But creating your timelines can be a tedious and time-consuming job. Until now. Because Timeline Genius lets you create beautiful, detailed wedding day timelines with ease. And it keeps everything you need on the wedding day in one central place. Here's how it works. First, Timeline Genius saves all your clients, vendors, and venues in your Rolodex, so you don't lose time looking for their information. And when you're ready to create a new timeline, you simply enter the key information for your wedding. Click a button, and voila! Timeline Genius magically gives you a customized timeline for your event, where all the details are laid out and the times are calculated for you. From there, you can easily edit your timeline by adding or deleting items, inserting images, changing font styles, and customizing everything to your liking. You can also instantly shift the times for as many items as you want. And when it comes to your clients and vendors, Timeline Genius lets you give them the highest level of service. You can send them tailored timelines, showing only the items they're involved in. And you can collaborate by inviting them to a mobile-friendly, web-based version of the timeline. You can even set text message reminders to automatically go out on the wedding day. And once you've completed your perfect timeline, you can download it or email it out as a beautifully styled PDF. And that's Timeline Genius, a smart software that will help take your wedding planning to the next level. Start your free trial today.
That is really cool. Yeah, it's like that quote that's always attributed to Wayne Gretzky where he's like, I skated where the puck was going, and
Yes.
the same friend that I mentioned earlier who was talking about life handing you circumstances that you didn't necessarily expect or want at the time when they were handed out being good. I remember we were talking about entrepreneurship one time and he was like, entrepreneurship is about vision,
Yep.
right? It's about seeing inherently, like entrepreneurship is about seeing something in the future like that doesn't exist today, right? It could be a wedding that you're planning, seeing that in your mind, or just as aptly like the future of a company, a wedding planning company or photography like venue or whatever, that business doesn't exist at the time when you conceive it. How do you like I always think like I love it when we come up with frameworks on the show or step-by-step guides, but I realize also a lot of times skills and attributes aren't really susceptible to that. Um, but I'm reluctant to just leave it at like, hey, you got to have vision without giving people a little bit of a sort of how-to. So for you, like, what has given you the ability to kind of have that forward thinking mindset? Like, where does that come from and how do you make sure that it stays present for you?
I think it comes down to some emotional intelligence too. So I think that there are some people that may be more apt to like thinking that way too. So I'm careful to say this because it's like if you don't have high emotional intelligence, you could still be forward thinking. I'm not saying that, but I think people with a lot of emotional intelligence have some strange gut check that maybe some other people don't have. I don't know how to explain that to you, but like
Yeah.
owning a business with my husband, we haven't talked about that. Like we co-own it. We both are in it full time. We actually were having coffee talking about this morning because like my emotional intelligence is like way up here and he's just like not there. And so like I feel like a little bit more intuition into some of that stuff as well. But I think I would say a couple things. Not being so siloed in your area of expertise and having exposure to what other people are experiencing and talking to as many people as possible. I know that may sound really simplistic, but like when you hear the same thing over and over and over and over, you realize like, okay, we have a common denominator here. So that was what it is for me is I love to find the common denominator because when you do that, you're able to kind of like okay, well, I'm not crazy, first of all. Like what I'm feeling, my gut check is
Yeah.
similar to this venue that's in California and I'm in North Carolina. Like we're having this shared problem. Like what is the solution to that? So a lot of people spend their time as business owners reacting instead of like stepping back, assessing the situation. Okay, I see this common issue. How am I going to respond to it? How am I going to solve problems, right? Like the fastest way to make money is solve problems, right? So like understanding what is the problem. I'm going to give you this example because I think it's helpful. I started seeing a common denominator that people, and I'm also putting myself in the marketplace invisibly and hearing what the industry is saying, our consumers. That's a huge part of it. I'm invisible in a bunch of different wedding groups all over the place, just
Mm,
quietly listening.
mm, mm,
And I'm not in there giving advice. I'm not in there marketing my venue. I'm in there listening
mm,
because they are my cash cow, right? Like if we're going to just be blunt about it, they are my future. And so I'm listening to them. I'm studying their complaints, their problems, because the way I make money is to solve their problems,
mm.
right? So the problem that I invisibly heard 3 years ago as we were getting through COVID and all that craziness, right? So we get through that, and I started hearing this little murmur 3 years ago. I'm looking for a venue, but I don't want a barn. I'm looking for a
Mm,
venue, but I don't want a barn.
mm.
And they were reacting to the fact that all of these new venues in the last 5 years have popped up because Grandpop has a farm and we have a barn. So it's logical that we should start a venue. And they don't know what the heck they're doing. And it's super rustic and blah, blah, blah. But ours was built as a venue and it's beautiful and it's nothing like that, right? It doesn't smell like cow. So I'm like, I've got to make a change, right? So I started leaning into our gardens, like hard into our gardens. And so I never, and all the other barn venues are super struggling.
Brilliant.
We never missed a beat because you will have to look hard to find tons of pictures of our barn. You're going to see beautiful pictures of gazebos. Not that we're hiding it, but we just changed. We have a modern reception space. We don't have a
Position.
barn. We have a modern reception space because we know that once they get there, they're like, oh damn, this isn't a, pardon me.
No, you're fine.
This is not a barn. Like this is so freaking awesome, right? And so I just knew that I had to get ahead of that, and I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't quietly listened. So
There is so much there to unpack. And I am mindful that I want to talk about mental wellness, but I do want to just say, I mean, I just feel such a vibe, like in resonance with a lot of what you're saying, Tirzah. But the whole way that I started Timeline Genius, you just spoke to what I think is like my most profound learning in my career as an entrepreneur, building 3 companies, and that the secret is finding a way to serve,
mm-hmm.
finding a problem that you can solve and going after that. And the more people you help and the greater the extent of the help for each person that you're helping, that's what's going to drive the success. And the success is purely an echo effect of delivering that help and benefit to people.
Absolutely.
And you find it like the way a lot of people think, oh, you have a great idea. I love what you just said. That's such a brilliant way to like back into the positioning. People like have this conception, oh, entrepreneur, like you have some great idea. I mean, I've had people tell me Timeline Genius is genius. Quick aside, I usually do like, if you're doing timelines the old way, please go to timelinegenius.com. It will change your life, period, full stop. Just go watch the video on the homepage. If you're a wedding planner doing timelines, I can't miss like throwing that out. Anyway, the way I came up with it, Tirzah, was I knew nothing about the wedding industry. I talked to, at my wife's urging, she was like, planning our wedding was really hard. She was DIY bride. She was like, if you're trying to solve a problem, go talk to planners. I talked to dozens, eventually hundreds of planners. Asked a simple question: what's the most tedious part of your job? And literally, I'll tell you this because it's August 28th, my birthday again. August 28th of 2013, I had a conversation with a planner, and she was the one. We were just about to get off the phone. She had told me about all these other challenges of wedding planning, and I was like, is there anything else? It was almost more of an afterthought, perfunctory kind of question. She's like, yeah, there is one more thing. Like, creating timelines is really hard. All of this to say, like, and I don't know exactly how people can take this and apply it to their business of wedding planning. What I do know, though, is that you, at least from my vantage point, for my money, that you just hit one of the most powerful principles for any business, which is focus on solving a need. And you said the other magic word, which is listening. It almost helped me that I didn't know anything about wedding planning because I was just listening to people. Like, and they will tell you if you listen. I love the idea of silently listening in these other spaces. I am going to move us on, not because I don't want to talk more about what we're talking about, not because I don't have more questions about it, but because I got the sense from you in our pre-interview and even during this chat that there's another topic that is top of mind for you that you think is valuable for our audience to maybe hear about, and that is mental health and wellness. Can you talk to me a little bit about that and tell me why it's top of mind for you? And let's try to share what we can to help people in this area.
Absolutely. I'm 30 years in, and there's not a lot of people that could say that, my whole entire life has been in this industry. And I could say that I didn't really choose that. I think a lot of us kind of find ourselves in life and careers or whatever it may be. Like maybe a lot of you that are wedding planners, you left your corporate career and you're here because you're wanting to live out your passion and you're really excited about it. But I think one of the things that I experienced, well, let me first of all tell you, like, I have managed and produced over 2,500 weddings in my career. So when I say these things to you as wedding planners, if you're listening, I want you to understand that I've been there. I can't imagine a situation that you have gone through that I haven't in some fashion experienced in my lifetime. But I mentioned a little bit earlier that this industry kind of, I don't want to blame it on the industry, but like my family kind of suffered because of, just the toll that it could take, right? Because it takes, sometimes if you let it, it will take everything from you. And you have to be so careful about like not giving the best parts of yourself, right, to these businesses, because that's not what they were intended to be. And so what I have experienced in my consulting with venues and even with some planners, I just spoke at a big wedding planner conference this year. And when people came to talk to me about it, the number one thing that they said to me, Eddie, was like, I'm tired. Like, I'm burnt out.
You hear
Like,
that a
I'm exhausted. I'm so tired of the drama. Why
lot.
are
Mhm.
clients so hard?
Yep.
So I would just say, I want you, as you're listening, if you have felt like, am I crazy or are people getting harder? Yes, they are getting harder. And I see three ways in which people are harder than I've ever seen them. One, I think that they are entitled. And that's very difficult because, we've had people redline our contracts that were done by some of the best contract attorneys in the nation, right? Like, these are good contracts, but they think, oh, well, this doesn't apply to me. I'm going to redline it and hand it back to you. And they just assume that you're going to change it for them, right? It's that mindset of they don't think rules apply to them, right? I think the second thing is this generation, it may seem weird to say, but they don't read. They don't read. And so, like, you're trying to interact with people, and you could have the most polished system ever, automations, timelines, right? Like, all this kind of stuff. And if they don't read it, it's very difficult to have that working relationship with them. And then the third thing that I'm seeing is that people are not resilient. They're kind of emotionally fragile. And so you are trying to interact with these people, and then before you know it, you've become their therapist or you've become their punching bag.
Mm.
And that is extremely difficult to deal with. I mean, imagine we have at any given time about 150 clients on our books. And imagine the things on a daily basis that we're dealing with that many clients. But as a wedding planner, you are in the trenches with these people for a year and a half, 2 years maybe, and they can suck the life out of you. And I see it. And it's getting harder and harder for people to remain emotionally healthy in this industry. So, before I kind of give tips, is there anything that you want to just like expound on any of that?
Yeah.
But I could keep going.
No. I just want to echo that. I've talked to people, Tirzah, that particularly planners that have been in for, you know, years, that haven't. They're not just like, oh, I'm just starting. And what I hear is something almost similar to what you said with the venues, where there's now just like this whole proliferation of other competition. And what I hear sometimes, and not even in a bitter, sour, resentful way, is like there are so many planners now in my city, Eddie, and there are these cliques that form, and they're like, I'm just over it. I'm just kind of worn down, and that passion and zeal that I had early on in building my company is being eroded. So I guess, want to just piggyback and say, from
Yeah.
my limited set of data points, talking to planners every day, all day across the nation, um, I think you're on to something.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's two sides to that. There's exactly like what you said. There's that like competitive element of a saturated entrepreneurial pool, right? that's a whole nother thing. So you're dealing with the drama of people stabbing you in the back, or a client is looking at multiple planners and one is totally bashing you or misrepresenting you, or, there's all of that for sure. Extremely exhausting. So you kind of put that in conjunction with the fact that clients are harder than ever. What do you do? So if you're sitting here and you're listening, you've made it, 45 minutes into this podcast. Congratulations, you've made it this far. Carry on. We've got help for you. If you've made it this far, I want to tell you that there actually is one thing that changed my life, that I spent thousands of dollars with an amazing therapist actually out in Washington that helped me do some really, really deep work when I was burnt out. And I put a sticky note on my computer when she told me this, but she said, Tirzah, write this down. And I said, okay. And she said, you dictate the terms. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, Tirzah, you're the only one that is going to protect what you need. No one else, not your husband, not your parents, not your best friend. Like, what is going to be healthy for you and what is not. And you have to create those boundaries for what is acceptable and what is not. And I think that it's very difficult as an entrepreneur to have boundaries, because we also have fear, and we're also hard workers, and we're strivers, and we don't want to turn down that phone call that could, be the next big thing or whatever, we are chasers, we're climbers. We see the mountain and we're going to climb it, right? Like, people that know me, I'm like, I am climbing a mountain at all times in my life. But when I realized, we're similar in age, I'm 45, and I'm like, when I realized that there's not a race, I could still climb the mountain and have boundaries, that I could still be successful and have boundaries, that was everything for me. That I didn't have to allow people to take me also down basically into their pit with them. That I have, I need to treat my business like a business, and I need to have hours and I need to not be responding to a bride at 10 o'clock at night. I firmly believe there are very few wedding emergencies in this world. I don't believe there's wedding emergencies. I don't believe there's an email that has to be responded to at 10 o'clock at night. And so I would just say to you, what are the things that you are doing in your business that you really, when you have to sit down to do it, it doesn't feel good? What is that client that is asking you to do something and you feel like you're having to give in to them? They're trying to force your hand to have a meeting at a time that is not good for your family because you're having dinner with your kids and that's a priority to you. That create boundaries around things that that you need to protect in your life. And they are the ones that need you, they can abide by your terms. And I think a lot of planners specifically, they easily get into this place where they're best friends with their client. I think it's super unhealthy, super, super unhealthy. And they think that they're doing a good job because they are having this intimate relationship with this person, that I feel like there needs to be a more professional kind of accountability in there, because then they feel like, oh, we're pals, so I can't tell them no, that you need to dictate the terms. So that changed my life, because honestly, I had gotten to the point where I was so consumed by other people dictating my life. When I kind of took the power over, I realized I get to say yes and no to whatever I feel like is right in my life. Other people don't get to dictate that for me. So I know that might be a simplistic answer to all of these huge things, but I think creating those boundaries and dictating the terms is what's kept me in it for as long as I have.
That's really powerful, Tirzah. And how do you, and I think you're right. I think, of all the professions out there, from programmers to air traffic or whatever, there are a lot of different jobs. I think wedding planners, especially by nature, and I think it's a beautiful thing, are hardwired to please and to amaze and to deliver joy and fulfillment to their clients. And as we talked about, there are pros and cons of everything, but how do you manage? Because there is something cool. I'm playing devil's advocate here just to
Yeah.
check out your thoughts. There is something cool. And I've talked to planners that are like, Eddie, I did the wedding and I did the baby shower. Like, they're delivering something that is like not just a distant, cold service. They are actually bringing themselves to the party to serve and to form a real human connection with their client. How do you balance this notion of boundaries
Yes.
with or maybe you're saying not to have that, but it seems like that is a good thing in a lot of cases. Like, how do you balance all of that?
Well, let me tell you, I am, like I told you, like I have high emotional intelligence and I'm very relational. I'm an extrovert. Like I don't meet a stranger. So I think it's actually even harder for people like me and other, planners out there that are like that. We don't get into this industry because we don't like people, like, so it is our secret sauce. It is one of the best things about us. But I think sometimes your best thing could be your worst enemy too, because it's like, you don't know when to take care of yourself, and I think that you could still be that person that you're saying where they're like, man, I've made a lifelong connection where they're going to plan every wedding in my family. They're going to be planning all of the events. They're
Right.
going to be there. But I also know, like, hey, it's not cool to be texting her after 6 o'clock.
Right on.
She's home with her family and she understands that that's a priority. I think that's a cool boundary, and someone that you want to work with for a long time and be their family planner. Like, I don't think that you have to sacrifice boundaries and still be able to be that for them.
I mean, I might almost say, and I'll say, Tirzah, I am guilty of this. Like, I have what Oprah Winfrey calls, she's like, I used to have the disease to please. I'm like, I know about that disease.
Yes.
I just, similarly to you, I feel like I probably have a pretty high EQ. Like, I'm just like, but I almost would argue that, like, even if a friend is doing that, you are entirely able to, though I don't necessarily always do it, to say, look, I don't want to talk at 10 p.m. Like that's
Right.
the boundary for me.
Right.
You're not a bad person and you're not tainting a personal connection by asserting your desired boundaries.
And it's respect, right? At the end of the day, like, I
Yeah.
think that we all need to do a little bit better about that. And it's not
Yeah.
like you don't have to take personal offense because someone has asked you to respect a little
Right.
boundary that they have, because, like you said, like, it is intertwined, but at the same time, we can't put forth the best parts of ourselves if we aren't allowing our brain to take a step back and being able to. And listen, I have failed at this more than not. Like, I really have. I have failed at this. I remember there was a time years ago I started in a network marketing company. Dear Lord, help me. And I grew to the top 5% of that company in
Wow.
18 months. My kids sacrificed so much, and they still talk about how much that hurt them that I did that. I was super successful. I was like, it was a really crazy ride. But I think about that all of the time when I think about what I say yes and no to. You hear that thing all the time. Like, when you say yes to something, you're always saying no to something
True.
else. It's
It's true.
true. And I'm not going to say no to my husband. Listen, I have sacrificed my marriage more than I wish I had for my businesses. I think we can all say that. We've been there.
Mm-hmm.
We've been like, we just went on a vacation in June and we hadn't gotten away, just the two of us, in 2.5 years. So I'm not sitting here like on some throne of
Yeah.
holier than thou
Mm-hmm.
saying, hey,
Yeah.
listen, I've done it all right. I have
Mm-hmm.
sacrificed. And it's really easy to sacrifice the marriage, especially when you work together every day. It's like,
Yeah.
why do we need to go on a date? Like, we're together every single day. you know this is something that I have to actively fight for every single day. And I really hope that you, as listeners, that you can kind of take a moment to sit back and and really evaluate if you feel good about the decisions that you're making. Like, when you make an exception to, like, hey, I'll pick up the phone at 10 o'clock and talk to you, like, did that feel good for you? Did that feel right to you? Probably not. Like, you want to have a business that you're creating that you can love for as long as possible. And if you start it from the very beginning, where you don't have these boundaries and you instantly become resentful and tired and burnout. I heard a venue today, actually online. I was reading someone, he said, I'm 2.5 years in and I am already burnt out. And and that is like, I hear the story every single day. I want you guys to build businesses that you love, that can last for a really long time. And you don't often get second chances, right? Like, if you really want to build and sustain this business, you have to put yourself as a priority. And it's not one or the other. You could have a successful business and take care of yourself.
I love that, Tirzah. I could talk to you about this for hours. I am watching the time fly, and I want to ask you. There's a question that I always ask of everybody that's been on the show, and it's, if based on all of your personal and professional experience, if you could give, I know we've already covered a lot of ground, if you could give one piece of advice to our audience that would be as helpful as possible as they build their businesses and work toward their dreams, what would your one piece of advice be?
I'm going to give you advice that may resonate with some and may not with others, but my best piece of advice is to trust God
That's beautiful.
and to lean on Him. And on the hard days, on the lonely days, on the maddening days, to have faith and belief that this world is so much bigger than anything we can imagine. It is the number one thing that has kept me here. I could give you business advice all day long, but I think having a strong faith in God has been the thing that has held me together. And I think that this is a really lonely, hard industry, and that a lot of us are looking for I don't want to be super spiritual here, but I have to be honest. Like, that is just something that I feel is so very important to me, is to have something in your life, whether it be God or whatever it is, that grounds you to who you are and who you're made to be and how you were meant to serve this world in an amazing way. Like, it's so much bigger than just your wedding planning business or whatever it is that you do. Life is so much bigger than these jobs that we have. We are all meant to be here to love and serve. So my piece of advice is to keep loving and serving, and know that you're not alone, that you have, um, there's so much, so much about this life that I think we just don't understand. And there's such a bigger picture, and that we are all made to love and serve each other to the best of our ability. And when we do that, we could do anything.
Tirzah, that is just beautiful. You know, it's funny. I was raised Catholic, and it's funny because it is sometimes I feel, and I'm sure you do because you alluded to it, like almost a little self conscious if the topic veers towards spirituality or religious beliefs, because you never want to step on anybody's toes.
Exactly. Yeah,
Kindly respectful of the fact that many people have different views,
absolutely.
but at the same point being who we are. And I love that you're like, look, you asked me, I'm going to tell you the truth, right? And for me, I was brought up Catholic, went to Catholic schools for years, and at some point at Duke, when I was studying philosophy and math and just starting to really kind of feel my way into my own adulthood and beliefs and orientation to the world, started questioning a lot of things. And I remember having these like deep conversations with my priest and all of this stuff, and eventually kind of finding my wife, actually, my now wife, then just a friend, gave me a book on meditation. And then I was reading like the Upanishads and the Dhammapada and the Bhagavad Gita. And like where I've arrived at this point, is, and it's funny, my dad, rest in peace, he's passed away. He was like, I think you're really going to come back to this whole like, believing in God. Like we all need, I remember I can still see him. It was like an intimate moment. We were just talking. He's like, you just want to have something that you can put your hand on, that you can hold on to, and I feel like at this point in my life, while I'm not a practicing Christian, my spirituality is
Yeah.
deeper than it's ever been. It's more a
Yes.
part of me. And the
Yes.
things that I hear from the Bible have more meaning and depth, like the teachings, like the underpinnings. And everything you're saying, I just feel that's so right. And even though I have an appointment that I'm supposed to be going to, I'm like, I need to just acknowledge that I'm with you. I think that our professions are just a part of this overall experience. Like, we're not, like, I look at my business, I've been doing it for 11 years. I'm like, that's a huge chunk of my life. Even if I
Yeah.
live to be 100 and I'm not done with it, like, it's at least 11%, assuming I live to 100 and I stop doing it. That's a lot of my time, and it can't just be about making money. And I do,
Absolutely.
you hit the nail on the head. It's about serving others, making this world a better place, finding those problems and selflessly tapping into them. And when you do that, it's almost like there's this cosmic breeze that's blowing in your sails,
It's true.
moving you forward. And it's also about the personal growth that I think, even through the adversity and all of that. But I could talk to you for hours, Tirzah. I really, really am. I'm just so grateful. Oh, I need to ask you, how can people get in touch with you if they want your mentorship, your coaching, if they're venue owners, or if they just want to connect? What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you'll put this in show notes, but my website is tirzahcaffee.com. You could always pop over there, and there is a form on my website if you want to reach out and connect with me. But I predominantly do work with venue owners specifically. I do some mentorship with, one-off things with wedding planners, more so like problem solving with clients and things that they just need a little bit of advice with something. But I have a free Facebook group that I do free coaching every Wednesday in there. That's just like, we talked about serving our community. Not everything is just about the almighty dollar. Like, I'm really all about helping and serving my venue owner friends out there. Like you said at the beginning, I have a podcast I actually just started. It's called the Venue Success Podcast. And I'm right now interviewing venue owners from all across the nation and hearing their stories and hearing about some of their successes and failures. So you could also follow along there. But yeah, I'm on Instagram, Tirzah _ the venue coach. You could find me there. I want to tell you, thank you, Eddie. Thank you for reaching out to me. I am so excited to just hopefully help some people that were listening today. I want to just close with one final thing that I want you to know that what you're doing is worth it. And there's hard days. I know, I feel you. There's those hard days that you want to give up. And I just want to encourage you to find a friend, find a mentor, find someone that is, be careful the tables that you sit around. Don't be the smartest person at the table. Be around tables of people that you'd trade a bank account with, right? Like, be around people that have had more success than you that you could learn from. And just understand that every challenge that you face is just one more step towards your success. So keep it up. Don't quit. Keep working hard. Just know that there's people out there that get you, that see you. And hey, I haven't met you, but I'm proud of you. So keep it up.
I love that, Tirzah. What a beautiful place to leave it. Thank you once again on behalf of the Timeline Genius community and our podcast listeners for doing this interview.